I'm Iryna, and if I could speak to you now, I'd tell you that I never imagined my story would end this way. I was only 23, just 23, with a heart full of dreams and a soul that believed the world was beautiful. I came here searching for peace, for safety, for a chance to live a life worth remembering, to build something of my own, a career, a family, a future. I wanted to wake up to mornings filled with sunlight, laughter, and love. But instead, my life became a headline, a story whispered in shock and grief. I was not ready to leave, not yet. There were so many places I still wanted to see, so many people I still wanted to meet, so many dreams I had yet to chase. If you're listening to this now, please remember me not for how I was taken, but for how deeply I wanted to live, for the kindness I carried, for the hope I held on to, for the belief that even in a broken world, love is still worth everything. I am still here, in your hearts, in your memories, in every quiet moment you think of me. And maybe, just maybe, that's how I will live on forever. Before the headlines, before the sorrow, before the silence that followed, there was a girl named Iryna, and her story was filled with light. She was born in a small town, surrounded by fields that turned golden every summer and skies that felt endless. Life was simple, and that simplicity made it beautiful. Her earliest memories were of running barefoot across grassy yards, chasing butterflies with her cousins, and laughing until her sides hurt. Her mother used to call her the dreamer, because even as a child, Iryna would sit by the window watching clouds drift by, imagining all the places they might go. She had an unshakable belief that the world was bigger, kinder, and more magical than anyone around her could see. Family was her anchor. Sunday mornings were sacred, homemade pancakes, shared stories, gentle hugs that lasted a little too long. In those moments, life felt eternal. And maybe, in a way, it was. As she grew, so did her ambitions. School wasn't just a duty for her, it was a doorway. Iryna devoured books about science, art, history, and dreams of faraway cities. Teachers described her as curious, determined, and quietly brilliant. She never wanted to be the loudest voice in the room, only the one that made a difference. Her friends adored her for her kindness. Iryna was the one who always stayed behind to help clean up, the one who listened when someone cried, the one who believed in people even when they didn't believe in themselves. Her smile had a way of softening the hardest days, a warmth that made you feel safe. But Iryna was not content with staying where she was. Her dreams stretched beyond the borders of her hometown. She wanted to see the world, to walk through the streets of Paris, to stand beneath the skyscrapers of New York, to study at a university where new ideas sparked like fireworks. She loved art, sketching in notebooks during long train rides, and she loved nature too. She could spend hours by a riverbank, writing in her journal or just watching the water flow. To her, every sunset was a painting, every breeze a small miracle. And like so many young people, she dreamed of a future filled with love, a small apartment with someone who understood her, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and music, maybe children running around one day. It wasn't just a dream of living, it was a dream of belonging. When the time came, leaving home was hard, but Iryna carried her hopes with her, tucked carefully between letters from her family and pictures of childhood memories. She believed in a better life ahead, a place where she could build something, contribute something, become someone. The journey wasn't always easy. She faced language barriers, cultural changes, long nights of homesickness, but through it all, her determination never wavered. She often said, "If you want the light, you have to be willing to walk through the darkness." This was Iryna, a girl with boundless dreams, a heart full of kindness, and a belief that the world still held good. Her story, in those years before the tragedy, was not defined by fear or sorrow, but by hope, the hope to love and be loved. the hope to make a difference, the hope to live a life that truly mattered. And it was this hope, radiant and unshakable, that guided her toward a future she believed was waiting. There was a time, not so long ago, when my world was whole. My life was filled with ordinary days, the kind we take for granted. Coffee with friends, long walks home from class, the comfort of knowing tomorrow would look a lot like today. But everything changed the day the sky broke open. At first the war felt distant, a rumor, a whisper carried on the wind. But soon it became our reality. Sirens became the soundtrack of our mornings. Windows rattled at night. Every phone call carried a question we feared to answer. Are you safe? I remember the first explosion I heard, how it shook the walls and the very air around me. I remember running to the basement with my mother, clutching her hand so tightly it left marks on our skin. Shops closed, schools shut down. Streets that once echoed with laughter now echoed with fear. We learned to live in darkness, lights off at night to avoid drawing attention. We learned to sleep in shoes in case we had to run. But the hardest part wasn't the noise. It was the silence that came after, when the world held its breath and we wondered whose name would be on the next list of those who didn't make it. And in that silence, a decision began to form inside me. I didn't want to leave. Every part of me wanted to stay, to rebuild, to fight, to hold on. But deep down, I knew that staying meant risking everything. And I had dreams, dreams too big to die in the rubble of a war I didn't start. So, with a heart heavier than my suitcase, I decided to go. Not because I was running away from my country, but because I was running toward a future I still believed in. The night before I left, my mother sat beside me on the floor of my room. We didn't speak much. We just held each other, silently memorizing the warmth of the moment. She brushed my hair behind my ear, just like she did when I was a little girl, and whispered, "Go live, Iryna. Live for all of us who can't." The journey began with goodbyes that felt like small deaths. I kissed my grandmother's forehead. I hugged my friends one last time. I looked at my home, the chipped paint, the crooked door, the tree I used to climb, and I tried to burn it into my memory, afraid I might never see it again. The train to the border was packed with faces like mine, tired, frightened, but determined. Mothers held sleeping babies. Children clutched worn-out toys. We were all strangers, yet bound by the same fragile hope that somewhere beyond the checkpoints and barbed wire, there was safety waiting. Crossing into another country felt surreal. The language was different. The signs were unfamiliar. But the scariest part was the realization that I was truly alone. Everything I had ever known was behind me, and ahead was a future I had to build from nothing. When I finally stepped off the plane in America, the air felt different. The sky looked wider, the streets were louder, and yet my heart ached. I was safe, yes, but safety felt hollow without the people I loved beside me. Those first weeks were the hardest of my life. I worked long hours in jobs that paid too little. I studied at night, determined to improve my English. I called home whenever I could, just to hear familiar voices. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to build a new life. Iryna, the frightened girl on the train, became Iryna, the woman who navigated a foreign city on her own. Iryna, the refugee, became Iryna, the student with a scholarship and a future. Iryna, the stranger, became Iryna, the friend, the volunteer, the dreamer once again. I fell in love with the small things, the sound of church bells on Sunday mornings, the way autumn leaves painted the streets gold, the kindness of people who held doors open and asked how I was doing. I started dreaming again of a career, a family, a home of my own. I wanted to build a life worthy of all the sacrifices that had brought me here. But even on the best days, part of my heart remained back home, with the people who couldn't leave, with the friends I might never see again. Every news alert made me pause. Every message from Ukraine felt like a lifeline. I wasn't just living for myself anymore. I was living for everyone I had left behind. And I promised myself this: I would not let fear be the end of my story. I would turn my pain into purpose, my exile into strength, my journey into hope. Because that's what I came here for. Not just to survive, but to live, to create the future that war tried to take away, to prove that no matter how many times the world tries to break us, we still rise. That day began like any other. Work, messages from home, a small plan for dinner. Nothing unusual, nothing that warned what was coming. It was Friday evening, August 22nd, 2025. Iryna headed to the Lynx Blue Line in Charlotte, the everyday train that helps a city breathe. She was just another rider, tired but hopeful, finding her seat and exhaling the day. Surveillance cameras later showed a man already on board. He sat behind her. There was no argument, no words exchanged. Just a routine ride that should have taken a few quiet minutes. Iryna boarded around 9:46 p.m. near Scaly Bark, and the train rolled north toward the East-West Boulevard station. Within minutes, everything changed. Passengers remember confusion turning to panic, the stillness of a normal commute collapsing into shouts for help. 911 calls flooded in. Strangers, shaken and breathless, begging for someone to come quickly. There's a woman in the train who got stabbed. She's bleeding right now. I think she might be dead. Their voices carried shock, fear, and the helplessness of witnessing the unthinkable. Police moved in fast. The man exited the train onto the platform and was taken into custody shortly afterward. On board, riders and first responders did what they could. But Iryna, the 23-year-old who had crossed an ocean to rebuild a life, did not survive. She was pronounced dead at the scene. News of the killing spread quickly, not as a sensational headline, but as a wound a city could feel. The transit agency reviewed protocols, community leaders spoke about safety, mental health, and the systems we rely on to protect one another. The footage, later released, raised painful questions. How could this happen on a public train, in front of people? In the space of a few minutes, authorities identified the suspect as 34-year-old DeCarlos De Juan Brown, Jr. He was charged in state court and soon after, federally charged with committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system, a charge that recognizes not just the loss of one life, but the threat to the public itself. Reports that followed painted a fuller, more complicated picture. A long record, years of instability, serious mental health concerns. A court-ordered competency evaluation was set to determine whether he could stand trial. These details do not excuse what happened. They only underline how many places a life can break before it breaks the lives around it. For Iryna's family, for her friends back home and here, the facts are simple and unsparing. She came to the United States for safety and a future. She boarded a train, and in the space of a few minutes, her story was taken from her. What remains now are the responsibilities the rest of us carry, to remember her as a person, not a headline, to keep asking the hard questions about prevention, protection, and care, to make trains, buses, sidewalks, all the ordinary places of our lives, worthy of the trust we place in them. When news of Iryna's death reached the world, the silence was broken by something louder, a wave of sorrow, outrage, and remembrance. From Charlotte to Ukraine to across social media feeds, people lit candles, shared her story, and demanded change. A memorial grew at the very Blue Line station where she lost her life. Flowers, photos, notes of love and regret. Visitors came in droves, leaving tokens of grief and hope. In South End, Charlotte, community vigils were held. Hundreds gathered in the night, shoulder to shoulder, to honor Iryna's life, to whisper her name in unison, to say, "You are not forgotten." Her family made their voices heard. They called for accountability. They called for justice. They called for safety in places meant to carry people. Trains, streets, public transit. We are heartbroken beyond words, they said. Iryna came here seeking peace. Instead, her life was taken in the most horrific way. Public figures responded. Officials, civic leaders, and locals pressured transit authorities to review security. Leaders spoke out about the flaws in mental health systems, in bail laws, in criminal justice, in how we care or fail to care for those at the margins. In North Carolina, a new proposal emerged. Iryna's Law, a plan to tighten pretrial rules, to prevent cases where dangerous individuals walk free on weak bail standards, to ensure such a tragedy is not repeated. And beyond legislation, in digital spaces, in homes, in hearts, her life was reclaimed in images of laughter, of friendship, of moments that weren't in her final hours. A tribute reel showed her swimming, cooking, hugging friends, dancing, all reminders that her life was not defined by how she died, but by how she lived. Her uncle spoke, her voice trembling with grief and resolve. She was the glue of the family. She didn't deserve this. His words echoed in the halls of systems that too often value policy over people. In Charlotte's city government offices, in stations, in transit boards, questions that once felt distant became urgent. Whose safety? Under what oversight? With what protections? The legacy of Iryna is now intertwined with that question. Her name is no longer just a story. It is a call to strengthen public transit, to safeguard riders, to reform mental health law, to demand justice with compassion. Because people must ride trains without fear, because lives must be protected, not disposable, because her story, her journey, her dreams must matter in more than memory. Iryna's name now stands as a symbol for dignity, for protection, for accountability. Her legacy stretches beyond grief, into purpose, into action, into change. She, dream-like tone, gentle piano underneath. If she were still here, everything would be different. The world would still be spinning. Yes, but in small corners of it, it would shine a little brighter, because somewhere in a quiet apartment in a new city, Iryna would be waking up to another ordinary, beautiful day. She'd open the curtains to the morning light and smile at how far she had come, from a small town in Ukraine to the skyline outside her window. There'd be a steaming cup of coffee in her hand and a notebook on her desk filled with plans. Her plans, dreams she once whispered into the dark, now written clearly in ink. She'd walk to work through bustling streets, headphones in, the city alive around her. Maybe she'd be working in a tech company or a nonprofit helping refugees like herself. Maybe she'd be teaching, guiding children who saw the same spark in her eyes that once lived in theirs. Whatever the path, it would be hers, built with courage, sacrifice, and endless resilience. If she were still here, she'd call her mother every Sunday, just like she promised. They'd laugh about little things, the neighbor's new dog, the recipe she still couldn't master, and plan visits that always felt too far away. And on those visits, she'd return home with gifts, stories, and the glow of someone living the life they once only dreamed of. There would be friends, a close circle of people who loved her kindness and the way she listened without judgment. They'd gather for birthdays, picnics, late-night conversations about love and the future. And she'd be the one who always remembered the small details, who needed comfort, who needed encouragement, who just needed a reason to smile. Maybe, just maybe, there'd be someone special. A love that grew quietly, tenderly, the kind of love she once thought existed only in books. Together, they'd talk about their future, a home with soft light and laughter, maybe children running through its halls, a garden on the balcony, a dog curled at their feet. Ordinary dreams, yes, but the kind that make life extraordinary. If she were still here, she'd travel to Paris, Tokyo, Buenos Aires. She'd stand on mountaintops and breathe in the air of places she'd once traced on maps. She'd taste foods she couldn't pronounce and collect postcards from cities that felt like chapters in a story only she could write. She'd volunteer, maybe at a shelter, maybe mentoring young girls chasing their own impossible goals. Because Iryna knew what it meant to fight for a future, and she would have spent her life helping others fight for theirs. And through it all, she'd still have moments of quiet. Sitting by a river with her journal, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink, whispering thank you to the universe for second chances and for every tomorrow. If she were still here, she would have built a life filled with meaning, not perfect, but hers, a life of love, laughter, and purpose, a life where her name was known, not because it ended too soon, but because of the way she lived. But she is not here, and that is the ache we carry. The future she deserved now lives only in imagination, in the hearts of those who loved her, in the minds of strangers who learned her story and vowed to make the world safer, kinder, better. And maybe that's where her legacy will grow, not in monuments or courtrooms, but in every hand that reaches to help another, in every law that saves a life, in every person who chooses compassion over cruelty. Because if she were still here, she would not want us to cry forever. She would want us to live, to build, to love, to dream fiercely and without apology. And perhaps in doing that, we bring a small piece of her future back into the world. Tone, soft, sorrowful, like a voice speaking from beyond, gentle piano and rising strings underneath. If you are hearing my voice now, it means my story has ended. But before I fade completely into memory, there are things I need to say, things I never got the chance to speak aloud. I wanted peace. I wanted life. I wanted what every person on this earth deserves, a chance to grow, to laugh, to love, to exist without fear. I was never searching for anything extraordinary. I did not want riches or fame. I wanted simple things, morning sunlight on my face, my mother's voice on the phone, a cup of coffee before work, a walk under a sky that didn't hide the sound of sirens. I wanted to fall in love, to build a home filled with warmth and laughter, to watch children I might one day call my own take their first steps. I wanted a future, not just for me, but for the people I loved and the world I believed in. And now, I want you to understand something. What happened to me is not just my story. It's the story of every person whose life is cut short by hatred, by violence, by neglect. It's the story of every dream interrupted, every voice silenced before it could be heard. So, I am asking you, no, I am begging you, do not let my story end here. Do not let me be reduced to a headline or a statistic. Carry my memory forward, not with sorrow, but with action. Look for the people around you who are hurting and offer them kindness. Speak out when you see injustice, even when it is difficult. Build communities where safety is not a privilege, but a promise. Teach your children that empathy is strength and that love is the only thing powerful enough to stop hate. And above all, never ever take life for granted. Wake up each day and cherish the small things, the smell of rain, the sound of laughter, the arms that hold you close. Live fully, fiercely, and without fear, because every second is a gift. Every heartbeat is a chance to make the world better than it was yesterday. I may be gone, but my story doesn't have to end. Every time you choose compassion over cruelty, I am there. Every time you speak for those who cannot, I am there. Every time you protect someone's right to live freely, I am there. And maybe, just maybe, if you do those things, the world I dreamed of, the peaceful, beautiful, loving world I hoped to build, will one day become real.